for coming out. Also, thanks to the speakers and everyone, the people before us, and the presenters. This takes a lot of work to get this done, as I've seen. So just like props to that. American Express, awesome spot. I feel like I'm giving a news conference. But I'm here to talk to you guys about server-side rendering with Vue in particular. Who here has used Vue before? Actually, take that back. Who here hasn't used Vue ever? Okay. Who here is front end? Who here is back end? Who here is both ends? Okay. So we got something for all you guys. I guess I'll start a little bit myself. I had the Twitter thing up here, but here it is again. My name's Justin Michaliga. You take the Liga part out of the Mica, and then put the Liga part back. That's how you spell it or pronounce it. I live in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. I actually like sports. Most people, like in our profession, don't really like sports. Who here is a sports fan?
Go sports.
Sports. Okay, a few people. It's like a decent 5%. Okay, good. I like particularly hockey. Any hockey fans? All right, whatever. Okay. I'm missing Monday Night Football for this, so I also have a tiny dog. I'm missing her too. Oops, maybe there's something else here. Oh, I started making Winamp skins back in the day. Who remembers Winamp skins? Yeah, it kicks the llama's ass. And then lots of games with like C++ and math library. I've been around JavaScript a lot, so it's evolved into what it is now. I don't even know what it's called. But we have a new version, it seems like every other week. However, we have their history. So back in like 2008, I think JavaScript really started sort of pick off a little bit more. We had all these MooTools was a library that people like started using. jQuery became a thing to kind of like get all the browsers sort of underneath control. And JavaScript was really picking up as an interactive component. So like 2008 happened. I think it was like Google Maps really like picked it off, where we had these things called XML and sorry, it's kind of Ajax, but it was really the one function was the XML HTTP request. So you had all these really cool interactive processes that you could do and do some server-side fetching. 2009 was actually when Node.js first came out. It wasn't really quite popular. People didn't really know it was going to pick off or not. But it was the first cases of people say, hey, we can actually write JavaScript and use it as a server side. And not like, oh, wait, JavaScript not in the browser? It's not made for that. So no, let's do JavaScript. Put it everywhere. JavaScript everywhere, everything could possibly go. Weird concepts. By the way, that clock never started. It's okay. I'll keep on going. 2010 NPM came a thing, so we had package managers. So you can say, hey, I want a little bit of this JavaScript dependency. And it started kicking off at a certain point. So much that this whole idea of JavaScript everywhere was like, oh, wait, it's just going to be a real thing. So in 2012, I believe, Twitter, at this point, I think Twitter started in 2007. I don't know, my history's bad. But in 2012, so I guess in like 5 years after that, Twitter said, hey, we want to really focus on the UX of our product. They pushed out this thing, and they made a big blog post about it, and saying that, hey, we're going to serve just like our front-end code from a back end, and then use our front end to like unravel it so it's like really fast. And people are like, what are you talking about? Why is this new Twitter thing fast? I'm going to publish all these slides, so there's like a link to here that has the blog post in it. Long story short, they actually made the request really quickly, and they had this really control of their UX because they were focusing on these really snappy applications, and it was serving basically front-end JavaScript through a back end, and then compiling again on the front end. Because it's kind of expensive to do all that front-end stuff. I'll learn that more a little bit later. And then isomorphic JS was a whole other thing too, where people started talking about it, like JavaScript is everywhere. So that's kind of where we were in 2012. Were you guys in the JavaScript world then? Like Angular was like the hot stuff, Angular 1. Anyways, 2013 happens, and we had these other things about speed mattering and really people focusing on UX. So when you actually see like a page load, it's like people started taking like how much do humans actually have to like say like this is quick and snappy or this is bogging down and it's slow. I wanted to go somewhere else. So there's a lot of studies being done. Google did a bunch of studies. There's all these like page optimizations, make your stuff faster. Some metadata. There's speed tests everywhere, making sure everybody's fast and like SEO and stuff like that. But basically, it was coming down to user experience and how well can we control that. And Twitter did a great job. So with this whole concept, we have server-side rendering, where it's consisting of an actual server that's going to throw you front-end code. Typically, it's done in Node.js. JavaScript as Node.js is kind of the big thing right now. But there are other projects that I want to make sure you guys are aware of. One of which is a project from Oracle called Nashorn. And another one's like PHP V8.js, where you can actually have JavaScript being run from a PHP server. I had no idea that existed, but it's a pretty cool project. So check that out. Secondly, we need a client to actually render all the stuff that we're getting from our server, our front-end server. In this case, we'll probably use Vue. But we can use other sorts of libraries. So another thing with that, this whole client-server thing, it's still in the front end. There still can be external API resources that may not be on that front-end server. Typically, you don't want to have that on the same thing just because it could get pretty hairy. So you'll have external APIs, and that can be in different language or another Node instance. So what are the pros of having server-side JavaScript? First thing is when you actually have all of your processed JavaScript, you can actually have better SEO. It's one of the big value points for this SSR stuff. Another thing is you actually get way more responsive pages. You don't have to wait for your DOM to paint off. You don't wait for all the resources to then push over there. You get extremely fast page loads and also with better caching as well. Biggest part, I think, is like the overall control you can get from the UX because you don't have to. You have a little more ways of saying like I want to like load this in because your asynchronous requests are going to be a lot more minimal. And also, with the examples I'm going to show you guys, you get better error handling as a developer. Say if you screw up your template and like you usually get gobbledygook, you can actually do that processing first and say, hey, you messed up your template on line 5, and then you can fix it immediately there. My experience. So when I was starting a new position, I worked for a cybersecurity company, and they needed to basically say, hey, Justin, we need to make a console for us. We're going to throw it away in 3 years anyway. Just go with it. So I was like, cool. I get this whole thing to do with anything. Let's research all of the UI libraries. Let's go to React. That's probably the biggest one to do it. But maybe it's like look at other aspects. I found Vue. Whoa. I fell in love with Vue immediately. It was really great. It had some really awesome design patterns. Actually had a really close-knit tie to more of the design community too. And the single file components were something that was like, oh, this is a nice thing. I can get a lot of these things done and prototype it pretty rapidly. So as I kind of went more into it, I was still looking at a lot of things with Angular and React. Well, in that time, I actually found this thing called Nuxt. Now, Nuxt is actually I guess a sibling, but like a younger child of another project used in React called Next. Who has heard of Nuxt.js? Cool. So this is basically like the same thing, but Vue's version of it. So I built a prototype using Nuxt, came up with all these really cool things, and then I realized I don't need this, and I ripped it out. Only because some of the things I needed for this project, like the SEO and the control of UX, wasn't necessarily something I actually needed. So it had this big level of complication where I didn't really actually use it all. So taking it out actually made the development process a little bit more straightforward. It took that front-end server that we didn't really need, just cut it out, and we just had a very simple client server stack. Again, I put the resources here so you guys can look at them of like when to actually use server-side rendering in Vue. Whoops. So I put something in here with the pros. Maybe not. All right. All right, so let's look at the cons. Like I said, there's more complex deployments. You have another server being rendered to render your front end. There's development constraints. Some cases where you just want to just throw something out there, you have to wait until some aspects are like mounted to your actual system before you can actually make other calls. So there's things like that. Also, if you actually are paying for your servers, you will have more server load in that case. Let me just double check something. Oops. Triple check something. These new keyboards, they have all these really cool things on the buttons and things like that, but they also are not very friendly. All right, let me slow this up again. Oh, okay. So this is the one thing I kind of missed in going through these slides, but this kind of might be a more visual aspect of seeing like what the client does and what the server does. Traditionally, you have a client that has your models and controllers, it's routing, and your server also had its own routing for API calls and controllers, which may had like Vue logic sort of intertwined between those two. With this, I guess, isomorphic style, you have a client and server that share both in harmony. All right, we did the pros, we did my experience, and we talked about the cons. So now we're going to talk about server-side rendering with Vue in particular. We always knocked upon Nuxt, but there's a lot of good resources out there that show Vue.js as its own. Without necessarily Nuxt, but they do reference Nuxt project to get started. The newest version of Vue actually supports alternative backends. So we're not going to be using just the Node.js portion. There are alternative backends you can do. Also, out of the box, there's a nice version of Hacker News. For the example, has a lot of server-side rendering as a part of it as well. So check that out. You can load it up pretty quickly. Other projects, everybody talked about like Meteor. Meteor is one of the bigger projects that has isomorphic JavaScript rendering. React, like I mentioned, there's a Next.js project. Vue has the Nuxt.js project, and there's a new project one of our members out here has written called Mobius, and maybe there'll be a talk about that sometime soon. It's pretty exciting. Now, we're going to get into more into Nuxt.js particularly. It is an application framework, so there's a lot of things that you have to kind of assume, like other frameworks. You have to have a particular directory structure. There'll be a few things that you don't have the actual control of. And there's two ways of doing it. You can start from scratch and build it around it, or you can actually load up a a helper application that most people have, and which we're going to do right now. So here's the demo. First off, the one thing we need is the Vue CLI to be installed. I already have that, but let's see if I can, well, I already have it, so not gonna lie. But this is the one thing that will actually kick off one of our Vue projects, our Nuxt projects in particular. So it has a Vue init, so it's gonna start a new project off the Vue CLI, and it's gonna be the Nuxt community starter template. So it's very, very straightforward. Might be a little small. All right, anyways, so I'm going to, actually let's go to the Vue CLI in general. Who's familiar with the Vue CLI? Okay, cool, a good amount of you guys, awesome. So what it is, it's a good way to like init a project, list and build stuff, like so Vue list. There's probably a bunch of other stuff here. This is a kind of nice way to really get a simple project up and running. But I'm going to do particularly the Nuxt community starter template. So this is another type of initialization from Nuxt. So what that's going to do, do I want to start here? No. Let's try it again. cd into demo. Okay, yeah, let's do it here. Okay, let's generate the project here. I have an old Vue version, oh well. So I was playing around, it's like I said, like sports, and particularly hockey. So I made this thing called the NHL Explorer. I was really bored, and I went to the NHL website and found out they have an API that's not really documented well. Like they have no documentation about it at all. It's this right here. It's really simple. It says stats.api.web.nhl.com/API, and then version 1 of it. I'm like, okay, well, let's look at version 1 teams. And I looked at version 1 teams, and I found, oh, cool, this is all the teams. And if you want to look for a little more information, you list teams with an ID. And at that point, I was kind of like stuck because nothing else was there. But I read up and found somebody else who actually found a little bit more. And there was like teams, and you pass the ID, and you can actually pass in roster. So you get all these players. And then I found out there's a people ID. So from this, I was like, I can explore this API. So I actually, on a Friday night, did that. Super nerd. And what I'm going to do with this project is kind of show you how quickly and easily it is to generate pages and generate things with the Nuxt framework without really having to do much at all. So right now I kind of just went from API Explorer, got started, I generated this demo type thing. It generated all this stuff for me. The one thing I still need to do is install my npm packages. So I'm going to do that right now. npm install go. And thanks American Express for your Wi-Fi. Hopefully I get lots of air points too. So yeah, what I'm going to do, and actually might as well just do this now. Oh wait, it's going off. Oh, cool. So Nuxt gives you this really nice, like, hey, thanks for installing Nuxt. Here's some way to give me money. So if you really enjoy it and it really helps you out, donate to these guys. Basically, it's a bunch of, there's 2 French brothers. They're in France somewhere. And they said, hey, let's make this cool idea. I think we're kind of rip off Next, but actually create some good practices into it. And I think that's the cool part about this JavaScript community. You can share ideas from wherever, and like as long as you present it well, and you have some good things to contribute, I think many people are definitely willing to support you. So definitely support them in their endeavors. I'm going to open up, with VS Code, so we can kind of see it. It's really tiny. All right. Well, first thing I'm going to do is show you guys the things that Nuxt generated. If you read the documentation, you'll get all the good stuff. But we had a good talk about the store. So Nuxt comes with Vuex kind of ready to roll right away. So you just kind of add some your modules and add some of your actions and setters and getters to the store, and that'll pick things up into it. They have this other thing called layouts. Right now it's just using the default view. And we'll see how that looks like right now. Basically, it's sort of like the main like router we have for any page. Right now, it's just very simple. It just has this thing called Nuxt. And we'll show other things with that. You'll probably have a set of readable components. Here is a logo. Basically, you have your template, style, and scripts. There's no scripts for the logo because it's just a logo. It does some animations. We'll see that later. But a lot of the cool things in here are pages. Right now we have the index. Very simple. It's already generated for us. It gives us access to the other portions of our application. So out of the box, I didn't add anything. I just kind of showed you guys what that was. I'm going to run install. Run start. Okay. Nope, that didn't work. npm run dev, because I'm not building it yet. And what that does, it's going to load Nuxt. So right here, what's happening, it's generating all these files. It's taking what we have from our source and actually compiling them, and then giving us an actual place to then view it. And it's on 3000. Cool. So I'm going to copy that, go to a browser, and paste into 3000. Cool. We got our NHL Explorer with our logo. It was a Vue logo, and it turned into a Nuxt logo. How neat was that? All right. Here's the cool part about Nuxt. I have a page, right? I'm going to make a new page. And I'm going to call it about.vue. All right, and I'm going to start with a template. And that's it. I'm just going to give it that, and I put it h1 about page. So right here, I can go immediately, and if you've seen the backgrounds, it reloaded. We didn't even see what actually happened because it was so quickly, but trust me, something happened. It looked at some things, and now I have an about page, which is now kind of sticking out the side. Let's see if I can fix that. I'll show you the about page. So what happened is it looks like I went to the renderer. It said fetch the URL, and it gave me my route where I needed to go. So route about, I did the same thing. So what magic behind that is there is some Nuxt hidden file that has a bunch of generated things. And if we look into it, you see it actually generates the routes for us, which is really cool. And that way, you don't have to actually go back and forth and do all these types of things and generate routes. You just have to go to the pages and make a new page. So here, I'm going to do something cool. And this is going to be revolving around the NHL API that we had talked about before. So I really want to do is find a thing with teams. And then I also want a thing to see a thing of players. For all the teams, and this is very specific about how Nuxt does things, we have two ways of looking at the teams. I want all the teams in the AHL, which in this case will kind of be an index. So I can index that view. And then I want each one, its very specific team by its ID. So I'm going to underscore that with id.view. Following me so far? Cool. So as I do a template, I can't spell. I can say, here's h1 of all my teams. And then I'm going to just list out all the teams as we do in VueLand. Who knows the shortcut for repeaters? V4. I'm going to do team in teams. So in our scripts, we're going to have to then export default. Man, I need a thing to get, shoot. Who's here was familiar with like Axios? Is that how you spell it? Pronounce it? Axios? It's a REST API type thing. So we're going to install that to our actual system. So I'm going to go back here. I'm in demo. npm install Axios. Oops. And then save. So we're going to put that into our project. Cool. So hopefully it does all that. So we can then import Axios from Axios. And I got that. So I'm going to export default. And then there's a thing, well, there's something that gives us async data from the Nuxt, because you don't have data right away because, well, you can have data right away, but in this case we want asynchronous data. So I'm going to call the await function for an Axios get, and then it's my API URL. So there is async and await. So once this actually happens, we actually get asynchronous data. So HTTPS, what was it, stats API, .web.nhl.com, and API v1, and we want the teams. I probably should put this in config somewhere, but whatever. We can do it live. Hopefully this runs. So I'm going to return teams. And it's going to be the data of teams. I cheated because I looked through this before, but I will spare you some of it. But if you want to just to get the data out and then put a pre and then throw the data here, that's how I initially did this. So I found out there was a data teams. Actually, let's just do this anyway. We'll just go, well, let's do teams anyway. So this is teams. And we'll just go straight data. Let's see how this works. OK, so right now I'm in my teams index. So if I go to our URL, we're at about. This is hard to read. Anyways, I'm going to go at teams. Site cannot be reached. Oh, you know why? You guys are the best. Run dev, right? All right, so I'm back up. Oh wait, apparently I didn't run my Axios stuff. Let's try this again. npm install save Axios. Is it not happening because, no, it looks like it's happening. Okay, there it goes. Okay, so it's building up again. Something happens. Oh, it looks like I have a bad thing in my template. So, oh, smart. All right, so here in my template, let's just make a big div to wrap it. Because templates are render functions, right? So if you have all these different elements, it's going to not have a single node to hang on to. So I get template erroring. Let's try again. Okay, so I get all this other stuff basically about my linting. Oh, God. Spaces 4, let's use spaces. Let's actually use 2 spaces. Here, that's better, right? Wow. And this is good practices, right? I mean, as much as this is sucky right now, it's going to make my end of my days happy. Unless it isn't. Oh, shucks. All right, let's see if this works. Uh-oh. And thinking that this would be perfectly run through is not ever going to happen. Saving session, saving history, master log out. What? Screw that noise. Start this again. And I put all this on the GitHub, so if you guys want to check it out yourselves, it should be an open repo. Okay, so all signs point to yes, maybe? All right, cool. Yay! So we have a full thing of the copyright and then the actual teams. So we're going to go straight back to our code. We're going to say teams is actually data.teams. Refresh that, see what happens. OK, cool. Now I can go here, and in my teams, make a link. So there's another way of doing this in Nuxt. It's called a Nuxt link. And you can do a to property. And then I can make my requests for teams and then pass in the ID. You see here we have this ID1. It's New Jersey Devils for some reason. ID2 is the Islanders. So we'll put all these in here. And then also on top of that, we'll just give it the team.name so we know which one's which. And let's see if this works. Save. Do we get live reloading? Oh wait, yeah, we probably do. I just want to get rid of this now. Comment this guy out. Awesome. So you have all the teams. Very cool stuff. So now for each team ID, let's do the same thing, except slightly different. Instead of the teams, we're going to have to go on the parameter. And the parameters are going to come in from here in asynchronous data. Params, and then error. All right. So we're almost there. We're going to just expand to params ID. And then they're going to find the roster. Now this is the part of the undocumented part. I didn't know the roster existed. Oops, say again? Oh, you're right. Boom. And here we're going to get roster will be data of some sort. Let's look for, this would be team, and I don't know what it's params ID. And we'll hopefully this be the roster. Let's see if this works. Save, and I have 1 minute left before this whole thing blows up. Space infix operator. All right, that's a little crazy. Boom, this thing is very, very crazy. All right, cool. So we're back to normal. We look at Carolina Hurricanes, team 12. Oh, did not work. Florida Panthers, team 12. Anyways, for this very, very exact scenario, I know I already baked this for us. There's probably something in there. I'm going to go cd into our actual project. Oops. NHL Explorer, and I'm just going to run it from here. All right, we're nice and built. Okay, we're back to where we were. All right, so here I have all the teams. Let's pick another one. My favorite, the Washington Capitals. We can see that their rosters pop up, and we have then a players aspect. So right here in players, we'll have players by ID, and then we can go into there and find out all the information about each particular player. So you have a cool API Explorer. It kind of goes back into many different pieces of the API, which is undocumented at this point. So if you want to contribute, go to that NHL Explorer project that will be on here. And also gives you a nice little way of like just doing things like mini sites. If you want a quick site to do about me, it's a really quick way to get things up and running. And it generates a lot of code for you, and you get SSR out of the box. So yeah, thanks a lot. And if you want to see pictures of my dog, I'm all about that too. Well, thanks guys.